everybody! Welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. March is here, so it's time for the March Square. This is the calendar blanket update for March. This is a happy little leprechaun hat, complete with a lucky 4-leaf clover and a little bit of a rainbow. There might even be a pot of gold around here somewhere. I don't know, I haven't looked for it yet. This is the same size as the February square and the January square, so if you're making the calendar blanket along with me, make sure that you have the January snowman and the February teddy bear to go along with the rest of your blanket. Links for those are in the description box down below if you've missed them so far. It's mostly scraps, so you only need about 40 grams of the blue yarn and of the green yarn and small amounts of the rest of it. Make sure that you are using the same color for your border as you are with the other squares you've been making, and that's all you really need to know. So let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, head on over to the craft table, and while I'm going, I think I'm going to look for a pot of gold. I am using 4-ply acrylic worsted weight yarn, the same size and type of yarn that I used for my previous 2 calendar squares. This will ensure as accurate sizing as possible. I need 40 grams roughly each of my green and blue. Those are my 2 main colors for the square, so a nice light green and a light blue, and about 20 to 25 grams of white. This is my border color, and I also need it for some accents. You also need a small amount, so just some accent amount of black, and then the rest of the rainbow colors. So red, orange, yellow, and I have nice bright purple here. You also are going to need a shamrock applique, and I'll put the link for that in the description box down below. You're going to want to make it in a green that's a different green than the rest of your hat, just so it stands out. So I've chosen to make mine a nice dark, rich green. You're going to need a yarn needle, a pair of scissors, and the hook, same hook as the last 2 squares, is a 5.5 millimeter hook or an I-9. And once you've got that, we can get going. The leprechaun hat begins with a square. So we're not actually making a circle, we're going to make a square. So we're going to begin with the green, and we're going to begin right in the middle. So grab your light green, this is your leprechaun hat color. We're going to begin with a cinch circle because we do want the middle of our square to be nice and tight. Once you've chained 1 to secure your circle, chain 2 more because we are using the double crochet stitch. This chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and now we're going to work 2 more double crochet into the circle. And we need to make it somewhat square. So we're going to chain 1, just 1, and that's going to create a chain 1 space between our shells. So we're going to work 3 double crochet, your chain 3 counts, chain 1, work 3 more double crochet into the circle, chain 1, and repeat this twice more. You'll have a total of 12 double crochets and 4 chain 1 spaces at the end of row 1. At the end of row 1, you should have 12 double crochets in total. They're all broken into sets of 3 with a chain 1 space in between. Don't forget your last chain 1. You can cinch your circle shut. We're going to join to the top of the first chain 3 that we made, and that will complete row 1. Just ignore that little short tail. You can weave it in later, let it hang out the back there. And now we are into row 2. We're going to chain 3 to begin. You're going to chain 3 to begin every single row of double crochet, and that chain 3 always counts as a double crochet. Then you're going to double crochet into each stitch. So in this case, there will be 3 of them. So your chain 3 counts, it's sitting on top of that stitch, then you've double crocheted into each of the next 2 stitches. That brings you to a chain 1 space, and this is what you're going to do in every single chain 1 space. 2 double crochet right into that space, chain one, we're going to stick with the chain one space, and only one double crochet. And that is the corner. Make sure you pull your work over a little bit so that you can expose the top of that stitch that you want to work. Otherwise you might skip it and you don't want to do that. Double crochet into each stitch across. And that brings you to another chain one space. There it is. And what do we do in the chain one space? 2 double crochet, chain one, and follow it with only 1 double crochet. And that's all you have to do for row 2. Make sure you double crochet in the top of every stitch and work 2 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet in every chain 1 corner space. At the end of row 2, you'll have 24 double crochets and 4 chain 1 spaces. So the last corner space you've worked is 2 double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. That brings you right up against the chain 3 that we began the row with. So just slip stitch to that to close. And now, if you need to, you can lay it down, find your little chain 1 spaces, and pull out the corners so that you've got a square. And you can really see the square now. And this is the shape we're going to continue with throughout the entire block. Row 3 is just like row 2. You're going to chain 3 to begin. You're going to double crochet into every stitch all the way up to the chain 1 space. And in every chain 1 space, you're going to work 2 double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So we double crochet in every stitch. When we get to the chain 1 space, we work 2 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet. Don't forget to try and tug your work back so that you can expose that stitch. You don't want to miss it. Double crochet in every stitch. Treat every chain 1 space the same, and I'll see you at the end. We're nearing the end of row 3. You're going to work 2 double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into that last chain 1 corner space. Don't forget to catch that first stitch of the first side because you actually started just next to it. So don't miss it. Join to the top of your chain 3, and you should have a total of 36 stitches and 4 chain 1 spaces all the way around. And at the end of every row, I kind of like to do this just to straighten it out so I can still see my square. Row 4, we're still working green. We're still starting with chain 3, and it's exactly the same as the row before. You're going to work a double crochet into every single stitch, and every single chain 1 space gets 2 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet. And I'll see you at the end of row 4. Just nearing the end of row 4, you should work 2 double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into that last chain 1 space, and you should have 2 stitches left to work before you join with a slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. So don't miss them. Double count, make sure you have 48 stitches, so 48 double crochets and 4 chain 1 spaces. Grab your corners, pull them out. Looking like a square. We are still using the green. We are now in row 5. We're going to chain 3 to begin, and we are going to do the exact same thing. Double crochet in every stitch, and every chain 1 space gets 2 double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And at the end of this row, you should have 60 stitches, so 60 double crochets and 4 chain 1 spaces. At the end of row 5, you should have 60 double crochets and 4 chain 1 spaces. And remember, as you came around from your last chain 1 space, 2 double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. You'd have 3 more stitches left to do before you joined with a slip stitch to the top of your chain 3. And that's it for the green part of the square. So we can snip our yarn now, fasten off, and grab your needle, so your little yarn needle, and take a moment to weave in your 2 ends. And this is kind of a nice thing to do right now, just so it gets it out of your way, and then we can move on with the rest of the square. Once we've completed our green square, which we have, we're going to move on to the blue part of our square. So grab your nice light blue. We're going to begin with a slip knot. And you're going to find a chain 1 corner. Any one chain corner is fine. And we're going to join with a slip stitch in that corner. We're going to chain 3. That counts as a double crochet. And now you're going to do the same thing that you've done in every other row. You're going to double crochet into every single stitch and work 2 double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in each chain 1 space. And at the end of this row, you'll have 72 double crochets and 4 chain 1 spaces. So the only thing that's really changing here is the color. Just nearing the end of row 6, remember we began this row by attaching our blue yarn and chaining 3 in a corner space. So in order to finish that corner, once you get up to it, work 2 double crochets into that space, chain 1, and because that chain 3 counts as a double crochet, that is the double crochet for the completion of that corner. So we're just going to join to the top of it with a slip stitch. And that is the end of row 6. You should have 72 double crochets and 4 chain 1 corners. Take a moment, count it up, maybe pull it out into a square shape, and we're going to launch right into row 7. We're going to change things up a little bit, so I guess listen up. It's a very subtle change. So we're going to chain 3 to begin. We're still double crocheting into every single stitch. So make sure you get a double crochet into every single stitch, and when we get to the corner, I'm going to show you what we're doing a little bit differently. Alright, here we are at our first chain 1 corner space. So you've double crocheted into every stitch across, and here's where things change up a little bit. Into that chain 1 corner space, you are going to work 2 double crochets, chain 2, so 2 chains now, and 2 more double crochets. And remember, you still want to pull that work aside so that you can expose the top of the first stitch of that row that you want to work. So it's a little tighter now, but make sure you still get that. So continue. You're going to work double crochet into every single stitch, but when you get to the chain 1 corners, it's 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. And I'll see you at the end of row 7. Just nearing the end of row 7, work 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet into that last space. And remember that when you chain 3, technically you were on top of that first chain 3 from the previous row. So that's your last stitch. You can slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. There we go. And that completes row 7. You should have 88 stitches, so 88 double crochets and 4 chain 2 spaces all together. So give it a nice quick count up. You should have 22 stitches across each row. We've got one more row of double crochet to do. So we're going to chain 3. We are still going to double crochet into the top of every single stitch, but we're going to change up the corners again. So when we get there, I'll show you what's going on. So across row 8, we're working a double crochet into every single stitch. We get up to the first chain 2 corner, and we're going to work a slightly different corner. So we're still working 2 double crochet to begin it. So 2 double crochet into that corner space, chain 1, and 2 more double crochet. So the corners for row 8 are 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. Remember, pull it all over so you can expose that stitch that starts your next row, and double crochet into the top of every single stitch. I will see you at the end of row 8. Here we are, ending the end of row 8. So you've got 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet in every corner space. You should have 2 stitches left to work before you get up against your chain 3 that you began the row with. You should have 104 double crochets, including your chain 3 stitch, and you should have 4 chain 1 spaces. You take a moment, lay it down, pull it out. You've got that nice sort of squarish square thing happening. We've got one more row of blue to do, and we are not changing the stitch count. So this is a row of single crochet. We're going to chain 1. You're going to single crochet into the same place that you just chained out of. So it's the top of that chain 3. So it might look a bit like that. There's your next stitch. You're going to single crochet into every single stitch, and you are going to do something different again at the corners. And when we get to our first corner, I'll show you what that is. So here we are working across row 9. We've got a single crochet in every stitch now instead. When you get to a corner, remember these are chain 1 corner spaces from the previous row, you're going to work your last single crochet into the last stitch, chain 2, completely skip over top of that chain 1 space, find the next stitch, and continue single crocheting. So you're not going to do a thing in those corner spaces, you're going to skip right over top of them. So you're going to single crochet in every single stitch. When you get to a corner space, chain 2, skip the space altogether, and continue single crocheting into every single stitch. And at the end of this row, the end of row 9, you will still have 104 stitches or single crochets, but you'll have 4 chain 2 corner spaces. And I'll see you at the end. We're nearing the end of row 9. You should work a single crochet in that stitch, chain 2 for a corner, skip over the chain 1 space, and continue single crochet. That brings you back to the first single crochet you made in the top of your chain 3 from the previous row. You're just going to slip stitch to it to join. That finishes the last row of blue. That finishes the row of single crochet. You should still have 104 single crochet stitches and 4 chain 2 spaces, and you can find them and give them a little tug, stretch it into a square, and you can fasten off your blue, grab your yarn needle, and weave in your ends. So we've made our green square, we've completed the blue part of our square, and now we're moving on to row 10, which is our granny shell border row. So grab your shell border row color. For me, that's white. We're going to make a slip knot to start. Grab your square, pick any corner. It's the chain 2 corner of row 9. You're going to join with a slip stitch in that corner. We're going to chain 3 to begin. This chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and we're going to complete a granny shell corner before we move on. So that's 2 more double crochets into that chain 2 space. And that shell is 3 double crochets, because your chain 3 counts, chain 2, and 3 more double crochets into the same corner space. That's your shell, chain 2 shell, granny corner. Now you can weave in that little short tail later, so you can just ignore it. Chain 1. I like chain 1s in between all my shells as a spacer, unless it's a corner, in which case I like 2. We're going to skip 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Here's number 4. And work a shell into it. 3 double crochet. Chain 1 for a spacer. Skip 3 stitches and find the 4th. So what we got here? We've got our join. 1, 2, 3. There's number 4. 3 double crochets. That's a shell. Chain 1 for a spacer. You're going to skip 3 stitches, work another shell, chain 1, skip 3 stitches, work another shell, chain 1, all the way across until you get to the next corner space. You should have 6 single shells separated by a chain 1 all the way across your first side, and those 6 do not include your corners. So shell, chain 2 shell, and then 6 individual shells. And I'll see you when we get to the next corner. After you've worked your 6th shell with a chain 1, so there's your corner, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shells. You should have 2 stitches left before you get to your corner. That's exactly right. And work a shell, chain 2 shell, or 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets into that corner space. And that is the border row pattern. Every chain 2 space gets shell, chain 2 shell, chain 1 in between all of your single shells, including the shell that pops out after your corner. And make sure you separate all those shells by 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. You skip, find the 4th. Oops, don't forget that chain 1. And work a shell. So skip 3 stitches, 3 double crochet into the next stitch, chain 1, skip 3 stitches, 3 double crochet, chain 1, and so on. And I'll see you at the end of row 10. Once you've worked the last shell across your last side, don't forget to chain 1, and then you're going to join to the top of that chain 3 that began your first corner. Slip stitch to join, and you can fasten off. And that is it for the square part of our square. So snip your yarn, fasten off, grab your yarn needle, and weave in that little end. Now that our square is done, we're going to move on and make the hat brim for our hat. So we're going to begin with the green spot. So grab your green yarn. This is the same color that you've made your hat with. So the green square part of your square. We're going to make a slip knot. And we're going to begin by chaining 28. Once you have 28 chains, you're going to find the first one and skip it, locate the second chain and single crochet into it, and into the next several chains all the way to the last one, so don't work the last one. You're going to work a double crochet into every single chain except the last one. So double crochets all the way across until you get to the last chain. Alright, you've worked double crochets all the way across. We're at the last chain. We're going to single crochet into it. So we're going to finish this little row the same way we started it, with a single crochet. So your 2 single crochets plus all your double crochets should equal 27 stitches in total. That's it for the green. You can fasten off and weave in your short tails. You should have something that looks like this. So there's a single crochet at each end, which kind of creates a bit of a tapered look to your brim. We're going to grab our black yarn now, make a slip knot, and then we're going to pick up our green brim. So you fastened off over here, So this would have been the first single crochet you created. You're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you want the 6th stitch in from the end. We're going to join our black yarn to it with a slip stitch. Chain 2, and this chain 2 counts as a half double crochet. We're going to half double crochet into the same stitch again, so that is going to be 2 half double crochets into that little stitch. And now we're going to half double crochet in each of the next 15. So just 1 half double crochet in each of the next 15 stitches. Once you've worked a half double crochet into each of those next 15 stitches, you should have 6 stitches left. So into that next stitch, you're going to half double crochet 2 times, and that is it. You're going to cut yourself enough tail that you can sew all the way around the black portion of the brim of your hat. So just enough tail to stitch down the black brim part. Fasten off. And that's the brim. You can put that aside. Now we're going to work on the rainbow. It's time to make the rainbow portion of our square. And you can actually put this in either top corner. I stuck it over here. I might put it on the other side this time. We're going to begin with the red. So grab your red yarn. You're going to make a slip knot. And we're going to chain 22 to begin. Once you have 22 chains, you're going to skip over the first one from the hook, find the second, and single crochet into it. And you're going to single crochet into each chain all the way back to the beginning. You'll have 21 stitches at the end of this row. At the end of your first rainbow row, you should have 21 stitches. You can snip your yarn, fasten off, and don't worry about your short tails. We're going to weave them all in at the end. So now you want to get your orange. You want to put a slip knot on your hook. You're going to work every row of your rainbow with your cast on and off tails hanging out to the same side. Identify that first stitch, skip over it, and join with a slip stitch in the second. So we're on the orange row. You're going to join with a slip stitch in the second stitch of that first row. And now you're going to single crochet almost all the way across. You're going to single crochet all the way across in your orange color until you get to the second last stitch, and then you're going to slip stitch into it, and you're going to snip your yarn and fasten off. There we go. That's it for the orange. Time to grab yellow. You want a slip knot of yellow on your hook. Pick up your rainbow. All short tails are to the same end. Now examine the end of your last row, or I should say your orange row. This is where we joined our yarn. So we slip stitched into the second stitch. That's technically a stitch, but we're going to ignore it. We're going to look at the first real chain, skip over it, and instead join our yarn in that second real looking stitch. So you're going to slip stitch to join your yellow, and then single crochet in each stitch almost all the way across. Once you get all the way across, you should have, there's the slip stitch you ended the row with, there's the last real single crochet. You're going to slip stitch into the last single crochet you made. And that's it for the yellow. If you're counting, row orange should have had 19 stitches in it, including the 2 slip stitches, and row yellow should have 16 stitches in it, including the slip stitches at the end. Snip your yarn, fasten off, grab your green. All tails are to one end, and we're going to do the same thing. So there's where we attached our yarn in the last row. We're going to skip that. Skip the first real stitch, or the first real chain we're looking at, and join our yarn in the next one instead. So we're joining green with a slip stitch, and then into the next stitch we're going to single crochet. We're going to single crochet almost all the way across. At the end of the green row, we are looking at where we slip stitch to finish. That's the last real single crochet. We're going to slip stitch into that stitch. And so you should have 13 stitches in row green. Snip your yarn, fasten off, grab your blue. Same thing, blue slip knot on your hook. Skip that cast on or that joining slip stitch. Skip the first real stitch. Join with a slip stitch in the second one, and then single crochet almost all the way across. We're looking at where we slip stitch to end, the last real single crochet. We're going to slip stitch into that second last stitch. That's blue. You should have 10 stitches, including your 2 slip stitches in that row. Snip your yarn, fasten off, and grab the purple. Purple slip knot on your hook. We're going to skip the slip stitch where we joined blue, skip over the first real single crochet, join in the second stitch, or that second single crochet, join with a slip stitch, and single crochet almost all the way across. When you come up to the end, you should have your slip stitch, your last single crochet, slip stitch into that last or second last stitch, fasten off, and now you can grab your yarn needle and weave in all of those short tails, because that's the end of the colorish part of our rainbow. So there's the colored part of our rainbow done. Now we want to add these cute little clouds along the bottom of our rainbow. So grab your white yarn, put a slip knot on your hook, pick up your rainbow and turn it upside down. We're now looking across the bottom, and now you're going to find the first chain. So here's where your chains start. You're actually going to pick up a piece of the edge, so not technically a chain, a piece of the edge of your red rainbow row. Doesn't matter what part, just a piece. We're going to join our yarn with an actual single crochet. So instead of joining with a slip stitch, we're going to single crochet immediately. Then we're going to skip 2 chains. So you see how that's the part we would be working. Find the third. You're going to work 5 double crochets into that space. So that's 5 double crochets. Skip 1 chain, find the next, and single crochet into it. And there is a fluffy cloud. Skip 2 chains, find the third, and work 5 double crochets into that space. That's that space underneath the chains. It's the underside of the chain. It's a bit funny. Skip 1 chain, find the next one, and single crochet. So that's what you want to do. You want to begin with a single crochet, skip 2 chains, work 5 double crochets into the next one, skip 1 chain, single crochet, skip 2, 5 double crochets into the next one, skip 1, single crochet, skip 2, and so on. And by the end of this row, you should have about 4 fluffy clouds. So I'm nearing the end. I've just worked my last 5 double crochets, and I'm going to just work my last single crochet into the edge of that rainbow red row, and there you go. 4 clouds. Now you're going to leave yourself a nice long tail, because you're going to sew down your entire rainbow and clouds with that white tail. So nice long tail. You can fasten off. And now grab your other pieces. It's time to assemble our square. You should have your square, your rainbow, your hat brim, and your 4-leaf clover. You're going to need your yarn needle for this, so we're going to be sewing everything down. And if you feel you need some straight pins, you can grab some straight pins. That's just if you want to pin some of your stuff down. So the first thing we're going to do is put on the hat brim. And this is where you might want to do a little pinning, because you want the black part of your brim to cover the bottom green row of your hat. So you might want to pin this down. You could also just hold it in place and sew like I like to, but here's the other thing. You may want to tuck a little piece of your 4-leaf clover under the brim. If that is too complicated for you, you don't have to do it. You can just sew it right across the top when you get to that point, but that's entirely up to you. Most importantly, we want to get this brim down. So your brim, the black corner, should come to the very edge of the green square on both sides. And if you have to do a little tugging to get it to do that, then that's fine. That's why I say you may want a couple of straight pins just to sort of pin down your work if you're not comfortable just holding it. We're going to sew down the black part of the brim first. That's what's going to hold it in place before we do the rest of the green. And you have a bit of a guide. Like I say, you're covering this bottom row of green. So this whole row of green is going to get covered by the black part of your brim. Now if I hold this, the first little bit of my hat I'm going to attach to the very edge of, see here's the back, the green row I'm covering, but I want it to come to the edge of my green square. So I'm actually just going to pick up a piece of that little bit of green, stitch that's there, and just anchor it to the edge of the black part of my hat. So then I can show you. See here? I've anchored it to the very edge of the green square, and when it lies down, it's going to cover the bottom row of that green square. So now all you want to do is just work your way across, picking up pieces of the top of the hat, or pieces of the top of the stitches. That way it won't show through to the end. What do I mean by that? I've picked up a little piece of each stitch, as you can see, going all the way across. On the back of my square, there is no stitching showing. So that makes your square nice and neat and tidy. So all you have to do is pick up little pieces of the stitches as you go. You can use the whole piece of the top part of the applique, but just a little piece of the stitch that's part of your square. And that way, nothing shows through to the back. So go ahead, sew down just the black part of our brim, and I'll see you at the other side. Alright, so I've come all the way across, picking up a piece of the top of the green square. See, there's nothing showing through to the back, no stitches. And the last stitch I made is in the edge, so the far edge of the green square. And that's the last stitch I made there. Now I'm running out of black yarn, but that's okay because I'm finished sewing. So now all I'm going to do is just knot that off and weave it into the black part of the brim of my hat. So now that the black part of our hat is sewn down, that leaves you with this green bit. And this is where you can sort of make your hat look like it's got a bit of a jaunty brow. You want to pin it or sew it so that the two pointy bits of your brim kind of come to the middle, sort of stretch out to the just towards the last row of blue. So see how they're kind of anchored in the middle of that last row of double crochet on either side. But you can sort of have it turn up or turn down. It's entirely up to you. That's why if you want to pin it into place, you can. You can make it turn up, you can make it turn down, you can sort of do whatever you want. But there's your two pointy edges. You can pin them into place. You want to thread up some green yarn. I like to tie it, so I pick up a piece of a stitch on the back of the brim of my hat. And I'm just going to tie a messy old knot here. But it doesn't matter because it's not going to be seen. So, knot twice to keep it in place. So there it is. And now, I'll flip my brim back down, hold it into place, and start sewing. So I'm going to pick up a piece of a stitch of the square and through the first bit of my brim. Piece of a stitch, piece of the brim. Because we already sewed down the black bit, you can kind of keep moving it around. It's not going to move on you too much. That's why I like to do this in pieces. So I'm going to sew down the top part first, and then I'm going to work my way across the bottom. A quick note on the bottom of the brim of your hat, you see that if you pull your brim down a little bit so that your point sits out to the side, it kind of pops back up, and half of that second last row of blue double crochet is used. So you can sort of see half of it there. So that's my first square. And it's roughly the same thing is going to happen. So I've sort of sewn it down to a point, and as I come back across the bottom of my brim, half of that row of double crochet is going to be exposed. And I like that because it looks like the hat sort of turns down at both sides. But you can fiddle with it, stretch it, whatever you want. It's your hat. Once your hat brim is sewn into place, you can just create a tiny knot here at the edge and then take your tail and weave it back and forth through those top stitches. Again, nothing needs to show through to the back, nice and neat and tidy. Then you can grab your 4-leaf clover and decide where on your brim you might like to put it. I think I'm going to put mine on the other side, but here's what it looks like on the right side. And I put my rainbow on the right side too, so I think this time I'm going to put it on the left side, but it's entirely up to you. So if you made the applique and you left yourself a nice long tail, then you can thread it up. If you need to pin your applique into place, you can do that. And just do the same thing, work all the way around the edge of your applique, picking up little pieces of the stitches and sewing it down as you go. So that's our 4-leaf clover sewn down to our hat. I sort of tucked the edge in between the stitches of the black part of my brim and sort of sewed it down. Again, no stitching showing through to the other side. And that last thing we need to do is add our happy little rainbow. So I'm going to probably put this into the right corner because I did that on this one. But it's entirely up to you. You can fit it into the top right or the top left corner. It is perfectly fine on either side. All you need to do is align your edges, so it's going to curve a little bit. You want to line up your edges with the edge of the blue part of your square, because we're going to be sewing it down with the white. Your purple bit is going to just curve across the top of your corner, right across there. and then the other side is going to line up with that edge. So you're going to sew it across that edge, and then obviously around the white parts. Looks like this when you're done. So you want to work little tiny stitches across the edge, not going through to the back, so just pick up little bits of the blue part of your square across the top, so there's little flecks of cloud all around the edge of our rainbow. You can do the same thing, pin it into place or hold it down. Grab that long tail you left, thread up your yarn needle, and once you've got it in a place that you like, start sewing. Once you've finished sewing up the whole edge across the top, so see how that kind of aligns across the top of the corner, right across the blue, down the other side, and then you want to make sure you get all around the little curves of your clouds. When you're at the end, just tie yourself a simple little knot. Nice and tight. And then you can weave your yarn in back and forth across your stitches. Don't go through to the other side. You want to keep it underneath the white but in between the blue. Go back and forth a couple times until you feel that your yarn isn't going to unravel on you. Snip any excess and you're done. Ta-da! And that is March. You may find a pot of gold at the end of your rainbow, but that's entirely up to you. Thank you so much for tuning in today, everybody. I hope you're making this calendar blanket along with me, and if you are, I'd love to see updates. You can share pictures with me on Instagram, on Google+, and even Pinterest. I'm at Jayda InStitches in all 3 locations. And that's it for this week, everybody. We'll see you again soon on the Jayda InStitches show. Until next time, stay safe, stay crafty, and have an awesome week. Bye, and happy spring.